Well, another week passes by, and there is no new arc of Andor episodes to binge. The show has just finished up its second season, and it seemed to be the final one. Luthen is dead, Dedra is in prison, and everyone else seems to be in their proper places to be seen in Rogue One. Well, except for MVP Kleya, who literally just falls off the face of the earth. But before we go any further, I gotta preface that I am not the biggest Star Wars fan. I mean, I like it. I grew up with the prequels, with Revenge of the Sith being my favorite Star Wars movie. The original trilogy is pretty good too, Empire is obviously amazing, but I still think Return of the Jedi is not that good. But that's a topic for another time. And unfortunately, I did also watch the sequel trilogy. I feel like these movies age worse and worse by the day. I mean, the dead speak. And then there's Solo and Rogue One. One has gotten worse with time, one has gotten better. I think y'all can figure out which one that is. But yeah, I was always a Star Wars movie guy, but I never watched any of the shows. I had friends telling me to watch Andor for years, but after seeing the sequel trilogy, Star Wars did not interest me. This all changed when my friend got me to watch the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian. I enjoyed the show, but it didn't really blow me away besides a few standout episodes. However, when I sat down to watch Andor because the second season was around the corner and my friends wanted to watch it live with me, I was blown away. The writing, directing, acting, that was all top notch, and the fact that it was set in arguably the most interesting Star Wars era of the height of the Empire made it even more hype. There's just something special about watching Rebels work tirelessly against an unstoppable force, but it wasn't really until this show that I felt really scared by the power of the Empire. Rogue One started scratching the surface, but Andor complemented it so much, especially about a character no one really cared for, that I ended up falling in love with this lovely story. Easily the thing that made this show so good and so unique was how it was separated by arcs. Every set of 3 episodes told its own mini story that connected within the full season. With the show now over, and y'all having heard me ramble about my entire life story about Star Wars, let's discuss the thing y'all came here to hear. How would we rank the Andor arcs? I will be discussing all 4 arcs in both seasons, plus Rogue One, making a total of 9 story arcs in this Andor storyline. The reason I'm including Rogue One is because I feel it's the final piece of the overarching story being told throughout the show of the slow buildup of the Rebel Alliance and how they took on the Empire by sending word about the Death Star. Considering that all the parts of Andor pretty much lead into this too, such as the Narina 5 sequence having them work on components for it, and the Gorman Massacre also being directly linked to it. Plus, Rogue One also kind of works as a 3-episode arc, with the first act being about the intro of Jyn and how she meets Cassian, ending with Saw Gerrera's death, the second part being about the finding of Galen Erso and ending with his death, and the final act being the whole attack on Scarif sequence, and ending with, well, everyone's death. Before we go any further though, I would just like to mention that I think every arc in this series is really good. There are tons of stellar moments in each one, with brilliant pieces of writing, acting, and directing. I would try to judge each arc by how consistently good it is on all these fronts, how it works as a contained story just within that arc, and how it contributes to the full story being told. Anyways, with all that said and done, let's get into the ranking. And coming in at number 9, we have the Narina 5 arc, or Season 1, Episodes 7 through 9. We start with arguably my most controversial pick. This arc is the most overrated in the entire show. I think it contains many repetitive and rushed scenes that really make the pacing feel awkward before the finale. It feels very setup-y, and I think most characters' storylines are at their weakest here. I think this is most apparent with Cassian, as I do feel his prison arc kinda drags, but I also kinda get why, so as to slowly grow his hatred for the Empire. His returning to his home to see it in shambles and then still running away was always kind of intriguing to me, but I also felt him getting captured was kind of rushed, and it low-key felt like it came out of nowhere. Like, why was his coming home and capture so rushed and his prison experience so long? Like Cassian, I also think some of the other characters' storylines felt repetitive, however there are still some amazing scenes. I still love Mon Mothma's financial and political problem scenes, but I feel like they're better in the arc before and after this. I like the reveal that Vel is her cousin, that def adds to her character. Dedra is still the standout to me in this arc as she methodically tries to discover Axis and scarily captures and tortures Bix. I think those scenes between the 2 characters are the best in this arc, and I low-key wish we had more. And I also love how we get scenes of characters finally starting to intersect, like Kleya and Vel meeting to discuss killing Cassian, or even Cyril being important again as he meets Dedra. However, my biggest problem with this arc is that it doesn't feel like a complete story. The standout episode of the show, One Way Out, the episode that tons of people talked to me about before I even watched the first season, feels like it should be in this arc, but it isn't. It happens at the start of the arc after, which low-key feels kinda strange. Like if that episode was in this arc, this would definitely be in the upper half of the list. But oh well. To pretty much explain my position one last time, I feel like this arc has the worst pacing, most repetitive scenes, and an incomplete story as a whole, acting a lot like setup. But it is Andor at the end of the day, so everything is still high quality. Coming in at number 8 is the Mina arc, which was the start of Season 2 of Episodes 1 through 3. I had a really hard time deciding which season had the weaker starter arc, and ended up settling on Season 2's, just because the story didn't feel as tightly written. Each character felt very disconnected, but I do think the plotlines were all still pretty good. Mon Mothma's story was easily the standout with her party sequences where she betrothed her daughter, and I love how she gets cooked at the end of the arc after finding out that Tay Kolma was planning to sell her out. Her scenes with Luthen are amazing, and I obviously love their dynamic. Dedra and Cyril's story is also fun to watch unfold, as we are introduced to the focus of the season being about Gorman. Dedra ripping into Cyril's mom is hilarious and super satisfying, and I also love how Dedra's story starts with her at one of the highest highs before she slowly goes down throughout the season. I also love the reintroduction of Krennic, which I think is handled better in this show than in Rogue One. He is not only menacing, but his mannerisms are so funny, and you can tell Ben Mendelsohn is having the time of his life. The scenes where he is explaining the Gorman stuff are a bit exposition-y, but I love how the organization of the roundtable discussions on pretty much how to be the most evil in the galaxy are contrasted with the disorganization of Cassian scenes with the annoying Brigade people. Unfortunately though, this is where the cracks of this plotline begin to show. The Brigade honestly comes across as super annoying on top of inept. Their jokes don't land, and Cassian's escape feels not super earned. I do like his TIE fighter escape at the start, but overall his plot seems to be very sluggish. Finally, before we move on, we have to talk about Bix. Her whole rape plotline was very hard to watch and was very unexpected, but you def started to feel for her even more. It feels like they were setting her up for a tragic end, what with the PTSD from Dr. Gore, her eventual drug usage, and, well, this whole experience. But with the show now over and her just leaving Andor and having his child, it feels like all this kind of made no point. Like, it was def powerful stuff, and it made me hate the Empire even more, but if you took it out of the story, I feel like nothing changes. If it led somewhere, I would have liked it more, but I feel like this whole arc will age poorly over time, with her plotline, Cassian's experience with the annoying Brigade people, and Dedra's exposition-y scenes. At least Mon Mothma's stuff is pretty good, and the story being told is at least a good setup for the future of the season. Oh yeah, Brasso dies in this too. Womp womp, I guess. Now, at number 7, we have the other opening arc of the Ferrix introduction in Season 1, Episodes 1 through 3. I initially liked the second season's opener more, but I feel like this one has aged better with time. It tells a concise and focused story about Cassian and his chain reaction of killing 2 men in Morlana 1 and how he attempts to flee before being enrolled into the rebellion. I love his flashbacks with how he was the last of the Calamaris, or whatever they're called. We see his relationships with characters like Bix and Marva, which are great. I also love how Cassian's mom is played by Aunt Petunia, and Cyril's mom is played by Miss Fig, like the neighbors from Harry Potter. Not really important to this ranking, but I wanted to mention it. I love Cyril's introduction here and how he starts the trend of the villains in the show being super smart and competent. The only things bringing this arc down is that I do feel it has the slowest pacing out of any arc in the show. So much so that to most audiences, it might take them a bit just to get into the show. I also find it weird that what starts this is Cassian looking for a sister, and then she's never mentioned again after this arc. I will say when Luthen is introduced, this arc is definitely at its peak. I love the third episode and escape sequence, and I wish the rest of the arc was as good as this. Good thing most other arcs in the show do that. Now, at number 6, we actually have Rogue One itself. Man, this story as a whole is one of the most flawed in the entire franchise. It starts off pretty meh, but it just gets better and better as the movie goes on. I love how it goes into the start of A New Hope and really depicts the power of the Empire. I like the cast, but no one is particularly memorable like they are in Andor. Jyn is a fine protagonist, Krennic is a fine villain, and Cassian himself is also just kinda meh. He is handled much better in the show. I mean, obviously, it's about him. All the other characters are either also meh or just kind of feel wasted. I mean, I like the blind guy and his companion. Riz Ahmed is in this, but I don't know, he's kind of just there. Mads Mikkelsen feels wasted and acts more as a plot device than a character. He low-key should have been one of the protagonists of the film. I only really liked K2SO as the comic relief. Kinda funny that my favorite character was the robot. Oh well. The cameos were fun though, mainly by Tarkin and especially Vader. I mean, don't get me started on that Vader sequence in the end. Oh my god. See, the characters aren't really what makes this movie, but rather the story being told and especially the climax. That whole Scarif sequence is peak Star Wars and stands out as one of the best things in the series as a whole. Thank God it's like half the movie, which is what brings this arc or movie or whatever you want to call it to number 6 rather than being at the very bottom. The show definitely enhances the movie experience, but I feel as time goes on, this movie will be seen as a complex guilty pleasure and a must-watch if you love Andor as it completes the story. Going back and staying with Andor, at number 5 we have the Aldani heist arc from Season 1, Episodes 4 through 6. This one is actually very reminiscent of Rogue One, feeling like a contained story of a group of rebels from various walks of life taking on the Empire. It features a skeptical protagonist as well as a character who serves to try and convince them to the cause. Damn, this is pretty much Rogue One, but on a much smaller scale. And like Rogue One, it features a bunch of one-off characters that I won't remember the names of. I mean, besides Cassian, you got the gruff black guy with a stormtrooper past, another black guy, which is their mole in the operation, a scummy white guy who tries to screw them over in the end, and an innocent white guy who Cassian bonds with. And then Vel and Cinta, who I only remember the names of because they appear in future plotlines. Jokes aside though, the pacing of their infiltration I think is actually handled pretty well, and I love the dynamics of the group, particularly how Cass tells them he is just a mercenary and he doesn't really care. Nemec's death is also heartbreaking, and I love the integration of his manifesto throughout the entire show. Honestly, this storyline has some pretty good pacing. No episode really stands out, but they're also all equal in quality to me. The heist itself is pretty solid and has the usual predictable heist hijinks of all the things going wrong, but it just works out fine anyway. Honestly, I do think Rogue One does a mission like this better, and this arc would definitely be lower if this was the only thing in the arc. But luckily, it's not. The best thing about this arc is that it introduces us to a collection of literally some of the best written characters in all of Star Wars, and they're all female. I mention that because I feel like not enough pieces of media do a good job of writing female characters. I'm looking at you, Marvel. But here, we get the introductions of Kleya, Vel, and then especially Dedra Meero and the goated Mon Mothma. Dedra and Mon are particularly interesting and bring this plotline up way high. I was always into the political maneuvering in stories. I mean, Game of Thrones is my favorite show for a reason, and these two characters' stories are exactly what I'm looking for. Each of them being on two sides of the same coin and using their influence to gain power and solve problems is super engaging. Dedra being an underdog here is fun to watch as she tries to rise the ranks in the ISB, and like I said before, she's smart. Smart people are always more fun to watch because it's hype to watch them decipher things and think of clever solutions. I mean, if anyone has ever seen Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, these shows thrive on that. Then we also got Mon Mothma, who shows some real class and desperation with some powerful acting of a woman stuck in society using her influence to do some good in the world of bad. Her relationship with Luthen is also great here, and their scenes are always a real treat. I could gush about these two for hours, but we should probably move on. They hardcore carry this arc up a few spots, but the Aldani stuff is also pretty good here. In spot number 4, we have the Gorman setup arc in Season 2, Episodes 4 through 6. I honestly didn't think I'd rank this arc so high because I feel like I barely remember anything that happens here, but revisiting it, oh, it's good. From here onward, I think these arcs are peak Star Wars and just general storytelling in media. This is the perfect setup story, while also just being a concise story in and of itself. Each character here is performing at their best, with the standout easily being Cyril Karn of all people. I was so engrossed in his story, and I love how it really took its time doing my favorite thing, showing and not telling. I still remember my friend and I watching this together and guessing what this all could be about. I loved Cyril being a mole who you could see grow conflicted, and the acting by Kyle Soller really sells me here. This plot also gives Cassian some fun stuff to do, like him going undercover in Gorman and telling Luthen that they are a bunch of amateurs, which they clearly are, as we see his fruition coming in true in the finale of this arc with their weapons heist, which goes horribly wrong. Which is also funny when you think about the fact that Cyril and Dedra wanted them to succeed too. I mean, what a bunch of dummies. Cinta being killed in collateral damage from a random blaster shot was also kind of just funny to me, and Vel's brutal speech at the end was amazing. Going back to Dedra and Cyril though, I love how we got to see their plan in action and us seeing their thought process, especially with their scenes with Partagaz. Now, Partagaz is another character I feel like doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, he is a scene stealer, and the fact that he is played by Anton Lesser, which I know as Qyburn, is just so hype. This plotline also has a fantastic story for Willman of all people, and showing the radical side of the rebellion with not only Gorman, but with Saw Gerrera. That scene where we find out he's just a druggie is also just so fun. Anyways, most everything about this plotline just works. The only thing I don't really love is the Vic stuff. Her being a drug addict was another fun concept, but like the rape from before, doesn't really have a payoff. Her taking down Dr. Gorst is also kinda like it feels rushed, and I wish we got more time to set that up. This plotline as a whole was good, like I said, but it had some flaws that I thought just brought it down a little bit. Oh yeah, that party sequence in episode 6 was also just one of the best Star Wars scenes ever, with Kleya and Lonnie's tense scramble to remove a bug, while Krennic just randomly comes in and catches Mon and Luthen off guard, and we literally get a clash of the Titans. Just peak. Now, at number 3, we have a plotline that I feel like might drop with time, and that's the Death Star Discovery arc, or the last arc of the show, being Season 2, Episodes 10 through 12. Don't get me wrong, it's a really good arc, but I feel like it has a bit too many flaws that many overlook, myself included, as I clearly have this at number 3. Its pacing is weird, where it's slow in Episodes 10 and 11, and then a little rushed in Episodes 12. Episode 12 is the weakest out of these 3, which sucks because it's the last episode of the show, but it def feels like a setup episode to Rogue One. I feel like I underappreciate the structure being more of a resolution though, rather than a climax like that of Season 1's finale. Cassian just, however, feels overlooked in this arc though, as well as Mon Mothma. However, it makes room for some other heavy hitters like Kleya or Luthen. With that out of the way, let's talk about why this is still a fantastic piece of TV. Episode 10 is a brilliant episode showing the backstory of Kleya and Luthen, and it easily becomes one of my favorite episodes of the series. You really get to feel for Kleya and her decision to kill Luthen. It made me think of how much better Season 1's weirdly paced second half, which I kind of addressed with my placement of the Narina 5 arc on the bottom of the list, could have been if I had a backstory for some characters too. In particular, how cool would it have been if we got a small backstory episode with rising stakes for Mon Mothma and her cousin Vel? Maybe how they used their wealth to slowly gain power, but also realized that they weren't doing the good that they wanted to do. It would really bring depth to their characters and to the season as a whole. We then could have had One Way Out actually being the ending to Arc 3 of the whole prison sequence, and this backstory episode for Mon and Vel, akin to Luthen and Kleya's, open up Arc 4. But oh well, that time has passed. Episode 10 really slows down the pacing before the finale while still having heavy stakes, which was a perfect balance. I loved the introduction of the Death Star and how Lonnie brought it up to Luthen before just being killed off screen. # Lonnie deserved better. And the scene between Dedra and Luthen, also just fantastic. And I love how Dedra's own ego and ambition got in the way of the Empire actually pulling away and not leaking that information and actually getting something out of Luthen. Episode 11, as another escape episode from Coruscant, was also fun, with incredibly high stakes, as we know how important that information for the Rebels was. Although Cass didn't have much development, I still enjoyed him and his relationships with Melshi, and especially K2SO. Yes, they finally brought back K2SO, and he was as sharp as ever. And as much as I kinda shat on episode 12, it was still a satisfying finale. Every character got proper conclusions and scenes to finish up their story. I honestly couldn't think of another way this show could have ended. Now, coming in at number 2 is the other finale arc, this time being Season 1's Return to Ferrix arc in episodes 10 through 12. I think this arc and the next one are honestly close to perfect. They each contain one pretty good episode, one absolute banger, and one pretty much perfect episode. In terms of this final Season 1 arc, we start off with the perfect One Way Out, one of 2 episodes I actually know the name to, and an absolutely inspiring and action-packed story. It's pretty much all a prison escape, with also some amazing scenes for Mon Mothma too, where she pretty much has to betroth her daughter to the son of the scummy Skolden. Going to the prison escape though, it is exhilarating and you are on the edge of your seat the entire time. We get that amazing speech from Andy Serkis too. I mean, the fact that they got him for just this arc in Star Wars, I thought they were wasting him in those episodes in Arc 3, but this speech more than made up for it. Much better than that stupid Snoke, because yeah, he plays him too, shockingly. Oh, and we can't forget that Luthen Lonnie scene. Great writing, great acting, just a perfect scene in a perfect episode. Episode 11 was the only decent episode here. It was still good, but served mainly as setup. Meanwhile, episode 12 was yet another banger. The citizens' turn against the Empire and Ferrix was satisfying, Marva's speech amazing, and I love how even Cyril got something to do in saving Dedra. This arc as a whole finished up season 1 amazingly, with a set of some of the best episodes in the show, and it also finished a concise story enough that many people thought that this was the ending and there was no season 2. But thank God we did get season 2, because without it, we wouldn't have had the best arc in all of Star Wars. At number 1, we all know what it is, it's the Gorman Massacre arc. The perfect story being told in Star Wars with just the right amount of setup and an even more satisfying climax. Episode 7 starts with a good reintroduction of how Gorman has gone downhill in a year, mirroring Ferrix in Season 1, showing how even a wealthy place like this means nothing to the Empire. Although a slow episode, I genuinely enjoy it being a deconstruction of Cassian's character, and I actually love the whole Force thing he has. However, Episode 8 is the real treat. Who Are You is my favorite episode of the whole series, and is honestly one of my favorite episodes of any piece of media. It is a full hour of impending dread as we slowly know what's about to happen. It's like watching a car crash. It's a spectacle where you just can't look away. The Empire's full evil is on display here, and I also love how a lot of the stormtroopers don't even want to do this. Dedra's plan works on a much worse level than even she thinks, as the weapons the rebels stole serve as the Empire's reason to justify the slaughter. Cassian being caught up in the middle with the task of assassinating Dedra is also a crazy mission and a terrifying plot, but the scene stealer, once again, is Cyril Karn. I love seeing his own thoughts begin to clash with the Empire. He watches as the horror he begins to witness, he helped create. And just when you think he's going to switch sides, he sees Cassian. He sees him aiming his weapon to kill the woman he loves, and Cyril just snaps. A guy who I saw as a weak slimeball shows he can go toe-to-toe with Cass. He overpowers him, but as he aims the gun at him, the line, "Who are you?" is said. I love how inconsequential Cyril is to Cassian, the man he was obsessed with for years. Then, in one of the most shocking twists I've ever seen, Cyril is just killed quickly by that Nazi dude from Inglourious Basterds. And then everyone moves on like it was nothing. This episode is a thrill ride from start to finish, and you can tell this was the story the whole season was building to. This is the Reigns of Castamere of Star Wars, true perfection in horror. Episode 9 shows the fallout of the massacre, as the rich political figures from Coruscant begin to second-guess everything, and Mon Mothma realizes this is it. I love how instead of being a cooldown from the massacre, it keeps the momentum going with this plan to broadcast Mon's speech and get her out of Coruscant. We have the two protagonists actually meet in Cass and Mon, and the plot is intense as we don't know who to trust, as Cassian smuggles Mon out of Coruscant. Cassian also has the biggest character changes here, as Bix leaves him at the end so he can fulfill his potential, which was gut-wrenching. This scene is brutal and amazingly caps off the best arc in Andor and all of Star Wars history. With that, we have reached the end of our ranking. Andor is easily one of the best surprises in quality I have ever seen. It showed me how you can tell an effective Star Wars story in the modern day, one that connects to everything that has been built already while telling something captivating and new. On top of that, its idea of releasing 3-episode arcs that each told a mini story in its set of episodes was brilliant, and I loved how they're all connected to each other and the eventual Rogue One, the movie that originated the title character. Man, how I wish the Star Wars sequel trilogy received this level of care as this show about an obscure character. This is what happens when Disney tries and Star Wars writers are given creative liberty. Thanks for watching, and I hope y'all enjoyed my ranking and retrospective on Andor. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my list, or if things like the Gorman Massacre were a bit too much for you to enjoy. Also, let me know about my idea of having a backstory for Mon Mothma. Any excuse to see more of this character I will happily take. Anyways, thanks again. Goodbye, everyone.